What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today we're going to be taking a dive into the Fallout universe with our favorite Fallout game, Fallout New Vegas. It's not too often we do New Vegas content on the channel, but after playing through a bit more in my spare time and especially re-exploring the DLC, I really wanted to make this video. You see, in the Old World Blues DLC, you visit a location known as Big Mountain, and not only is it a very memorable place with some super wacky characters to meet, but it's also incredibly intertwined with the rest of the game, especially in the other New Vegas DLCs. I really love all the tie-ins, and one of the best ways to explore them is by looking at all the crazy abominations and inventions created at Big Mountain and how they've had big impacts around the wasteland. In this fun little video, I'm going to be taking you through 6 disturbing monstrosities created at Big Mountain, but before that, let's go over what this mysterious facility actually is, what its purpose was, and what happened there. Also, remember to subscribe if you're keen for loads of Fallout 76 content upon release. Previous test subjects who have come here have had many questions for us. We answered them with science, fire, and termination. Big Mountain, officially known as the Big Mountain Research and Development Center, or colloquially the Big Empty, was once a prosperous pre-war defense contractor, but in the year 2281, over 200 years after the bombs fell, the facility is a shadow of its former glory. The research center was once located underground beneath the peak of Big Mountain, but after one of countless failed experiments, the mountain was utterly vaporized, leaving the research center intact in a crater open to the elements. The original intention behind Big Mountain was an honest and optimistic one. It was founded with the goal of building the future of mankind and creating the technology of tomorrow without restraints, either moral or technical. It welcomed some of the most gifted pre-war scientists who plumbed the depths of many experimental technological fields. But as we saw through West Tech, the company credited for creating the forced evolutionary virus, America's great wartime ambitions often came along with dire consequences. The research conducted at Big Mountain was groundbreaking, but it was also horrific. Nothing got in the way of science, and that meant experimenting on humans, even keeping them detained in concentration camps. When funding began to decline, the great scientific minds turned to shady deals and third-party contracts, stopping at nothing to fund their experiments. At the heart of Big Mountain, there were 6 wonderfully talented yet morally challenged executives. Their collective name was the Think Tank, and they operated from within the center dome of the crater, surrounded by bright blue spotlights and satellite dishes. The scientists of Big Mountain came up with some glorious new technologies, including holograms, cyberdogs, advanced stealth suits, and next-gen hazmat suits. But not all of their inventions were so well implemented into mainstream use, and Big Mountain became infamous for the monstrous creations that birthed from the minds of its scientific geniuses. We've narrowed these monstrosities down to 6 of the most disturbing, and the first is one you will have undoubtedly encountered in abundance in your journeys through the Mojave Wasteland. The only thing more obnoxious than an insect in the post-war wasteland is a mutated insect, but what makes this first monstrosity disturbing is not the fact that it's obnoxious, but rather that its sting is incredibly noxious, often fatally so. This is the Cazador. 4 large amber wings suspend this huge blue-black insect in the air, and one can only wonder what kind of deranged madman would release such a blight on the world. That madman is a member of the think tank Dr. Boris of Big Mountain, and he created the monstrosity in the Z14 Pepsine DNA splicing lab. To be precise, a Cazador is a giant tarantula hawk spider wasp. In the real world, the tarantula hawk is known for its ability to prey on tarantulas, hence the name. Unfortunately, even an arachnophobe could agree that the Cazador is infinitely more disturbing than any tarantula. Their erratic flight patterns make Cazadors a nightmare to snipe out of the air, and it only takes one venomous attack from the Cazador to doom its target. The sting of an adult Cazador deals more physical damage than that of a giant rad scorpion, and as for its poisonous properties, Cazador venom is 3 times as potent, lasting considerably longer. To make matters worse, you'll rarely encounter one of these skittering insects alone, for they usually travel in swarms close to their large basket-shaped nests. And obviously, they can fly, which makes things a lot worse. Our second disturbing monstrosity is noticeably less alive than the Cazador, but it is no less deadly. This is the Cloud. The The cloud is a thick crimson haze of toxic smog which can be found spewing from the air conditioning vents of the Sierra Madre casino. It smells metallic of copper and sulfur, it burns the lungs and seeps into the skin, and prolonged exposure to the blood-red fumes leads to certain death. The truly sick thing about the cloud is not that it's dangerous to inhale. Inhabitants of the post-war wasteland are used to such things from nuclear radiation. What's really disturbing is the fact it is not naturally occurring. The cloud was artificially and intentionally produced by the wonderful scientists of Big Mountain. It was tactically leaked through the ventilation of the Sierra Madre in a controlled outbreak. But why? Well, you know how I mentioned earlier that Big Mountain was also responsible for some positive inventions. Well, in order to test their revolutionary medical technology like the auto-doc and the next-gen hazmat suits, the doctors of Big Mountain wanted to create a demand for their implementation. How do we test the technology? Well, how about we poison innocent civilians and let our inventions save the day? Only the disturbing thing is, they couldn't even save the civilians from their artificial toxin, and the cloud corroded the fastenings of the hazmat suits, trapping the wearers inside. Maybe if you really try, you could justify attempting chemical warfare on your enemies. You could possibly make the argument that it'd save lives on your side, but in the case of the cloud, the scientists of Big Mountain willingly poisoned innocent bystanders and even created the menacing ghost people. Third on the list of Big Mountain's disturbing monstrosities is the Y-17 Trauma Override Harness. These robotic harnesses were baffling in the scientific community. Using intelligent fibers and artificial muscles, the brainiacs of Big Mountain had created a suit that could take over the motor functions of the wearer, carrying them back to safety when injuries were sustained. But what's even more incredible is that this discovery was made during the same time that crude hydraulics dominated military tech in 2077. What could possibly be disturbing about such an incredible creation? Well, the harness created in Big Mountain's Y-17 medical facility was crawling with issues. Top marks for innovation, but when lives are at stake, your inventions need to be infallible. The first major issue was that if a home base was not defined, the suits would enter an unpredictable wander state. Another issue was that while it was possible to calibrate the upper injury threshold for the override to kick in, the sensors could not detect if the user was still alive. And thirdly, the suits recorded all user movements and could effectively learn to replicate their shooting and fighting reflexes, but simultaneously, they lacked any IFF software, IFF meaning the identification of friend or foe. As I'm sure you can imagine, the combination of these fatal oversights was not pretty. The suits had no destination, the suits would remain vigilant and active even when the wearer was killed in action, and the suits could fight effectively, attacking friends and foes alike without restraint. What was born as a result was an army of aimlessly wandering corpses, cruelly operated by flawed AI, revoked of the right to a burial and forced to kill relentlessly until the suit was destroyed. So far, these monstrosities have been both morbid and terrifying, and what follows is no exception. What comes next is an experiment that subjects a human to a painful death, and the mutiny of their autonomy at the hands of a fungal infection. Have you ever seen one of those green ghoul-like abominations called Spore Carriers? Well, these things were once humans, victims of a biological infection created in the X-22 Botanical Garden of Big Mountain. As is so often the case with the never-accountable geniuses at Big Mountain, this creation was intended to be a positive innovation. In the Botanical Garden, a fungus named Beauveria mordicana was created. It is an entomopathogenic fungus, which means a fungus that can act as a parasite of insects and can kill or seriously disable them. The good old biology majors of Big Mountain intended for this hard-to-pronounce fungus to colonize the bodies of common pests. It was given to the inhabitants of Vault 22 specifically to test its effects. This fungus had two significant drawbacks. The first was that when the host died, the now ruling fungal colony continued to animate the body. The second drawback was that, you guessed it, the fungus did not discriminate between common pests and humans, leading to the rise of these disturbing monstrosities we call Spore Carriers. 4 down, 2 to go. I'm sure you can all guess why Big Mountain really struggled with funding after a while, hey? The next monstrosity is another gem created by the legendary Dr. Boris. The Cazador was quite the feat of biological experimentation, but this one blows that out of the water, in my opinion. What happens when you splice the DNA of two deadly predators? You get yourself a Night Stalker. It's always nice to have a level-headed doctor obsessed with saving lives or curing disease. Dr. Boris was rather obsessive, only his obsession was with rattlesnake DNA. Brilliant. Behold the abomination created when a rattlesnake is fused with a coyote. They growl, howl, and whimper like regular coyotes, but hiss, rattle, and inject venom into their prey like snakes. Perhaps the one saving grace of encountering a rattlesnake is the fact that its rattle blows its cover, and its lack of limbs gives you the chance to hightail it out of there. With the Night Stalker, there are no saving graces. It has a rattlesnake's head, but the size of a dog's head, and it's conveniently placed atop the athletic quadrupedal body of the coyote. Even if you hear the rattle, running is a futile effort. Originally conceptualized in the Z9 Crotalus DNA Preservation Lab of Big Mountain, the Night Stalkers now plague the Mojave, competing with the Cazadors for prey. They hunt in packs and reinforce their venomous bites with impressive canine leaps. A Night Stalker's venom may not be as potent as a Cazador's, but this unnatural monstrosity is as disturbing as they come. The Night Stalker resembles the absolute height of irresponsible scientific procedure. Giving the elite scientists of Big Mountain no restraints was a terrible oversight. And now we're down to our final creation, and this one is not just disturbing, but downright bizarre. Remember Rex, the cyborg pet dog of the king of Freeside? That's a cyber dog. These loyal, less squishy versions of man's best friend are hardly monstrosities. In fact, they seem like a pretty positive invention in the Fallout universe. Cybernetic enhancements can keep your pal alive and well for centuries, replacing vital organs with high-tech implants, and say goodbye to arthritis because even the limbs and jaw and tail can be replaced. The drawback is that these cyber dogs are rare, and creating one is extremely difficult, requiring both a high degree of technical sophistication and generalized breeding and training programs. Anyway, while the Cyberdog was not invented at Big Mountain, a certain innovation was created there. The geniuses at Big Mountain asked the question, what if this cybernetic dog was a weapon as well as a trusty pal? Behold the K9000 Cyberdog gun, a true feat of scientific pursuit and animal cruelty. The Cyberdog gun is a gun with the brain of a living dog. It features two metallic ears that replicate the authentic floppiness and a sniffer, allowing the Cyberdog gun to sense its surroundings. The gun will growl at enemies, bark when equipped, and whine when unequipped. It's a gun that'll sniff out and find your enemies for you. There's even a unique variant named Fido, which features a painted bulldog visible when firing the gun instead of a golden retriever, and it also has additional firepower. This particular invention seems like a real mockery of the creative freedom the scientists of Big Mountain were afforded. All these monstrosities we've listed, noxious gases, insects that'll make your skin crawl and eventually erode, highly contagious fungal parasites, a fucking coyote with the head of a rattlesnake. The think tank and their employ of scientists took many liberties, and they are solely accountable for the deaths of countless innocents. But even if we could overlook all of that, there is one thing we simply cannot abide, and that's mistreating man's best friend. And that wraps up this video on 6 disturbing monstrosities created at Big Mountain. Let us know which one you think is the craziest in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for watching FudgeMuppet and for enjoying this truly classic and amazing Fallout game. Hope you enjoyed this fun little video. Subscribe for more Fallout content in the future, especially Fallout 76, and follow us on social media if you want to keep up with everything Fudge. Thanks again for all the support. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.